I apologise if I look very tired. I feel very tired. Today I filmed the third episode of our gaming podcast, the Elden Ring Haters Club podcast. The Elden Ring Haters
Oh my
podcast.
God! Why are we stop losing our audience immediately as we start the podcast?
The
No,
Elden Ring.
I'm
Elden
taking
Ring
over
Haters.
hosting duties. This
No,
is the
the Elden-
gaming something podcast. We haven't named it yet. I don't know. We talk every few weeks.
Really glad Shadow of the Mid Tree hype's passed, and now Black Mid Wukong is the new thing. But we'll get through it. And
I already know.
games will still be
I
around.
already know the biases before we've even started.
And that should be up on my second channel. We're talking about Concord, among other things. Star Wars Outlaws, I was talking about a lot. And yeah, been really horrible, disgusting weather in England. I have OCD, so my sleep has just been terrible lately. Like, my brain is so frazzled. So then, when I go on Twitter and read Matt Walsh talking about why raw milk is bad for you, which is probably the only thing I've ever agreed with Matt Walsh on, I then look at his replies to see hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands, of replies from conservatives across America telling him why he's wrong and why it's actually good to drink raw milk. Now, I obviously made a video, like, I think it's 2 months ago now, talking about raw milk influencers on TikTok. Now, at the end of the video, I talked about conservatives promoting this. But if you've watched that video, you know the focus of the video was not on this as a political thing. It was mainly just talking about it as a public health thing promoted by just loads of random people on TikTok, kind of across the political spectrum. But now what we're seeing is American conservative brains are just absolutely cooked by conspiracy theories, propaganda, and weirdly enough, racism. And a lot of this, pro-raw milk stuff is also wrapped up in anti-Semitism because it's an extension of the return to tradition mindset we're seeing a lot across the American conservative movement. And I actually made a whole video on this, I think like a year ago, talking about how a lot of this was actually anti-capitalist. Now, maybe if you just grew up in America, anti-capitalism has always been associated with the left for good reason. Most of us on the left are anti-capitalist. I especially am. I'm a communist. I absolutely hate capitalism and I want it abolished. But historically and today, there are actually a lot of fascists who are also anti-capitalist, and there's also often a lot of religious people who are anti-capitalist. A lot of Islamists are anti-capitalist as well. But the difference is how they diagnose the problems with capitalism. So for the left, it's because we believe, capitalism is a death cult. It's fundamentally sending humanity on the path to its own, at least part extinction, maybe the whole extinction of the planet, most life on Earth, because of pursuing the profit for a handful of people. And we want to replace that with a system where everyone's needs are provided for, we all have equality, and we all have freedom, and we don't commodify the basic necessities for life. But as we're going to see today, when conservatives are anti-capitalist, it's not really wrapped up in anything coherent. It's mainly, they often phrase it as, we are anti-globalist, in terms of anti-globalized capitalism. And you heard this sort of rhetoric with the Trump administration where they talk about the globalists, right? And what they firmly believe, a lot of them anyway, is capitalism was an invention of Jewish people to make most people, and if you're American conservative, you're thinking white people, slaves to an economic system they created. And this goes hand in hand with them pursuing urbanization. So they basically put all of humanity into these giant cities where they all become wage slaves, basically for the Jewish interest. That's what these conservatives believe. And going back to tradition is rejecting modernity. And you see that with fascists like Julius Evola, who I spoke about recently with the Lord of the Rings stuff. They wrote books about rejecting modernity, and they were also fascist anti-Semites who didn't like capitalism either. And that's what I believe you're seeing across the conservative movement. Yes, you can say their brains are fully cooked, and I would agree with you as well. But I do think there are a few of them, especially seems like the 4chan types have just infiltrated and taken over Twitter. They do love Evola, and their love of things like raw milk is an extension of that because they believe, you know, it's natural. It hasn't been as processed or commodified by like special interests. And it's also like a rejection of government interference. So it has that libertarian stuff. And there was actually a congressman who jumped in Matt Walsh's replies telling him that, yeah, he too drinks raw milk. So I just wanted to talk about that a bit more today using this Matt Walsh backlash as a case study. And maybe link it to historically why fascists, and Matt Walsh is one himself, by the way, only look at what he's been tweeting about native peoples recently, and I made a whole video on that as well, but why they just love what they see as organic or natural food and rejecting, I don't know, what we eat today generally. So all of that coming up for you in the video. Please follow me on social media at the Kavernacle on mainly Instagram if you want to support my work. Please check out my Patreon page. Benefits include early access to videos where you can watch them ad-free on Patreon itself, and you can also get access to the Discord server. And of course, check out the gaming podcast. I'll have a playlist on my playlist section of all 3 episodes, so if you're interested in any of them, go check all of that stuff out. So I'm going to recap my video that I made a couple months ago. Don't want to get into it too much. Please go watch that. But I know a lot of you won't have watched that and you won't watch that. So basically, raw milk is bad for you. Raw milk can lead to you getting diseases from animals. A cow can transmit tuberculosis from itself to you through raw milk. Lots of other various diseases cows can get, let's say like avian flu, can also be passed to you through raw milk. And yeah, because conditions in a farm might not be that sanitary, you don't want to potentially get very, very ill from the bacteria or viruses within raw milk. And actually, this has killed millions and millions of humans throughout human history. And it became a massive, massive problem during the Industrial Revolution across the West, where people were living in closer proximities and getting their milk from less regulated, less healthy facilities and stuff. Places like New York were absolutely ravaged by disease caused by people drinking raw milk. So pasteurization was basically enforced. And pasteurization, named after the guy who invented it, Louis Pasteur, is just basically heating up milk pretty much at certain temperatures. Different places have different methods of doing it, but yeah, that's essentially all it is. There's basically no nutritional loss in doing this, and it just makes it safe to drink, right? Really, really simple. Loads of humans throughout history have had to die from this because they didn't know any better, as is the case through most medicine in human history. We had to learn through loads of us dying and then realizing, oh yeah, this is caused by a certain thing. Let's not do that anymore. In many places across the world and in many US states, it's illegal to sell raw milk, but not everywhere. And now we're seeing it make a comeback with all of these weirdo influencers, not necessarily right-wing, as I said, but on TikTok, it is absolutely insane and rife with misinformation about the benefits of drinking raw milk.
This is why you should be drinking raw milk. Raw milk has been associated with beneficial changes in the gut microbiome, including increased levels of lactobacillus. And raw milk also contains the highest levels of MSM, a compound studied and found to improve joint health.
The reason that we love buying dairy from the Amish is that they don't pasteurize their dairy.
Raw milk was demonized. Why? Because these big dairies have sway with the government and the media. Obviously, they will say and do anything that will make them more money. Obviously, as a result of this, raw milk being sold from small, most of the time family-owned farms, were now deemed dangerous and unacceptable.
The government doesn't know what strains of probiotics are found in here. Like, the more and more I learn, the more and more I'm realizing the government is a sham.
Which no one should do, and pretty much none of us really even have to drink milk in the first place. I know I've pretty much given it up recently just because my stomach can't handle it. And since like cutting it by like 95%, I definitely haven't seen any negative side effects or stuff affecting my health. So yeah, don't believe anyone pushing this stuff because it's just dangerous, and it's actually bad for humanity because it could be an easy way for animal diseases to spread to humans, causing another pandemic. And that's the case with a lot of animal agriculture. Now, this science has been widely accepted for a long, long time, but as we live in an intellectual age or just an anti-basic health information age, which was exacerbated by the pandemic, you get shit like this. So there's a guy called Case Bradford, and he just tweeted 15 different raw milk options available on the shelf at the store. 3-block walk away. Every American should have this level of access to healthy, nourishing food and local raw milk. As I said, literally like no benefits to drinking raw milk. And this guy is just tweeting a lot about raw milk, talking about RFK Jr., who also promotes drinking raw milk, all that garbage. But Matt Walsh quote tweets it, and he says, "Raw milk is disgusting. We live in a first world civilized society, and people are actively choosing to consume milk riddled with E. coli and listeria. Pasteurization is not some evil sorcery. It just kills the dangerous bacteria. You morons. Next, you should go out and drink some raw water straight from your local lake without doing anything to purify it. Enjoy the parasites, hippies. Very disappointed to see so many right-wingers falling for this hippie propaganda. Glorifying third world hygiene practices should be the leftist domain." So a nice bit of racism there at the end to highlight his point that, yeah, in Western countries, we pasteurize our milk because we're just very, very smart and superior to all these places. But don't worry, loads and loads of absolutely unhinged backlash. Walsh is a real city boy. Matt, you realise that raw milk was the choice of milk for all of human history, and only recently was that changed. It's entirely safe. Open your eyes. So I think that tweet there pretty much sums up so much of his anti-intellectual public health rhetoric. Yeah, humans used to do that for like their entire history, so it actually isn't bad because humans used to do that. Humans used to do loads of really, really unhealthy stuff, which led to insane pandemics just ravaging us. Why did it change? Why are people now more aware of all these terrible diseases you can get from eating animals? People had to die for people to realize that, yeah, you can do stuff to make people more safe from these pandemics. Like, open your eyes to what? What is this guy talking about? At first, I thought this was a parody shtick. Nope, you're just that dumb. Weren't you pushing the vaccines too? You're literally the meme, virgin, pasteurized, Rothschild propaganda drinker, Chad, raw milk enjoyer. So I told you, it has this anti-capitalist stuff, mainly focused on like Jewish bankers and stuff. But yeah, virgin, pasteurized, Rothschild propaganda drinker. Chad raw milk enjoyer is the guy who rejects this propaganda and only drinks natural stuff. And then here's an actual sitting congressman. Bad take. I've consumed raw milk almost every day for over 2 years. It's done wonders for my health and it's delicious. Pasteurization and homogenization can kill germs, but they both diminish the health benefits of milk. In any case, it's everyone's right to consume it. Even if pasteurization did diminish the benefits, like from milk, drinking milk or whatever, right? Are they really that significant that drinking the raw version does wonders for your health? Like what? What could possibly be gained from drinking something dangerous like raw milk that you couldn't get from something else? It's just like absolutely pure fantasy conspiracy theories. And if there's any benefit to this guy's health, it's the placebo effect of thinking drinking raw dairy has done something for you. Raw milk has been drunk for generations and generations. It's extremely beneficial for the body. It provides enzymes that you can't get from pasteurized milk. It helps with allergies and it helps with skin conditions. I could go on, plus it tastes freaking amazing. No evidence for any of that, including it tasting good. I've heard people say it tastes absolutely disgusting as well. You mean the stuff we were consuming for thousands of years before you came around and said it was scary? And that has 8,000 likes. Again, no one went around and convinced people it was scary. Like, I think it was in 1 year in New York, like about 100 years ago, like 8,000 children died from drinking raw milk. That's why people started pasteurizing it, and that's why the government enforced it, because it was killing loads of people. Do these people seriously think just one day someone decided like raw milk was bad and then everyone listened to them based on nothing but vibes or something? It's just so insane. Reading the comments on this post gives me so much hope. You can't stop the raw milk wave. Too many people have felt its benefits and transformed their health after adding raw milk liquid gold to their diet. So before we move on to some of his other responses, someone just says, why aren't all the Amish dead then? And this is why just arguing with people about this stuff is so stupid. Raw milk just doesn't kill you randomly, right? You can get away with it. You can drink raw milk all your life, and plenty of humans have. Plenty of people who grew up in rural communities have done this, and nothing happens to you. And you got lucky, right? But if you put that on a massive scale, statistically, not everyone is going to get lucky. And if animals start transmitting diseases to humans, we get another pandemic likely, right? So that's why you don't drink it. And that's why Amish people can drink it and they don't all die. Because that's not what we're saying. People are saying you do the simple thing of just heating milk so you don't potentially get these diseases because you want to be safe, because there are people who are still alive and you can read their books. They've had like tuberculosis from drinking raw milk and it's absolutely destroyed their entire life. Do you want to be that person? And all we have to do is just heat milk. Don't have to add anything into it. You just literally warm it up. That's all. To avoid that. That sounds pretty good in my opinion. The more anti-Semitism, I'll keep doing the opposite of whatever the Rothschilds forced on everyone to do to their food. So he started trending. He said, am I really trending over the milk thing? So someone's saying pasteurization wasn't invented until 1862. Humans were drinking raw milk well before then without any issues. There is nothing dangerous about raw milk. Matt Walsh saying, this is 85 IQ logic, truly stupid. Many basic hygiene and sanitization practices were not invented until the last century. Surgeons didn't even start washing their hands until the 1870s. People died all the time from preventable germs and bacteria for thousands of years. If you go to the replies to any of his tweets on raw milk, it's just absolutely overwhelming engagement against him. All of these conservatives talking about the benefits of drinking raw milk and how it's just the most amazing thing ever. And there's a reason humans drank it for thousands and thousands of years. Not because they were ignorant, but because it essentially gave you superpowers. And yeah, like the pandemic, it's just been so annoying for all of this stuff. Like I used to write about the pharmaceutical industry for my job, and that often included writing about like the FDA and even food regulations. And even the anti-vax stuff used to be so fringe. And now all of this stuff is just so fucking mainstream, especially in America, which seems like the most like anti-science place in the entire Western world. So yeah, I'm not surprised that so many of these like weird people are drinking raw milk, but it just shows how capitalism, but also distrusting government, often caused by capitalism, is just so bad because we can't even agree on really basic measures to make food safe to eat and safe to drink in this case. But there was an article on ABC News tracing the link between the natural food and the Germans in the 1930s and 40s. Thought it was an interesting article, mainly because you're seeing a lot of anti-Semitic people reply to Matt Walsh, who I also believe like is an anti-Semite, but probably just not as extreme as these people. And I thought this was interesting reading this because it links to the back to tradition stuff I was talking about, like rejecting modernity and only eating like very natural things, because the more natural and connected to the earth and the soil, the better it is for you. The natural eating movement is far from new. Its roots extend back to fascist Germany. Leave our food as natural as possible was a slogan coined in 1942 by a German physician, Werner Kollath. The Nazis were very concerned with regenerating the Aryan body, so they had this big push to get people into healthier lifestyles, says Dr. Karina Treitel, Associate Professor of History at Washington University. But she says a precedent of prioritizing health for political gain was established well before then. The Germans are really just a particularly nasty example. The dream of eating naturally has been politically promiscuous in many different cultures. It goes back to the 1800s. The Germans were interested in health for two main reasons, Treitel says. Firstly, it supported their master race ideology. They really cared about propagandizing health practices that would support the Aryan body. Eating more naturally, eating organic, eating less meat, less refined sugar and other processed foods were part of that health promotion in a racial sense. Ideas of nationalism were also relevant to eating natural foods, says University of Newcastle eugenics researcher Dr. Sasha Davis. For the Germans, natural was aligned with ideas of blood and soil, a popular slogan. There is this idea that the natural food for the German or the Aryan body is the food that grows from German soil. And just expanding on this a tiny bit more, so there's a long association between milk and white supremacy, as bizarre as that sounds. As legal scholar Andrea Freeman explores, Freeman traces the link back a century with official US government documents from the 20s, suggesting a link between white people, milk drinking, and superior intellect. Sociologist Melanie Dupuy has described how milk was central to the construction of the modern Western nation state. the nutritionally perfect white drink was symbolically linked to the white-skinned bodies that were better able to digest it due to a genetic mutation known as lactase persistence. Early 20th century milk advertisements perpetuated this trope, often juxtaposing images of healthy-looking, light-skinned people with sickly-looking, darker-skinned one. As bizarre as, like, making milk a racist thing sounds, it's also something that is in, you know, Western diets more than it is in Eastern diets. Like, dairy generally is more common in our diets, and in Asian places, it's mainly more like nomadic cultures that relied more on dairy. And also, you know, reading about the Germans in the 1940s, you just see not just the link with milk, but the link to all this, like, organic stuff grown from the German soil. And especially when you wrap that in with the concerns about urbanization, if you slap a conspiracy theory on top of that, that there's actually a sinister group of people behind all of this to make you eat garbage, to make you live in cramped conditions in a city for their benefit while you're a wage slave. That's how a lot of fascist types end up being, in a warped way, anti-capitalist, because they're not actually against, like, labor exploitation. They're not actually against, like, the exploitation that generally comes through capitalism of, like, the global south. It's that they think they're being controlled by, like, a Jewish communist conspiracy theory to make them into a slave for their profit. And rejecting the government, rejecting any sort of public health regulation, and going back to tradition, going back to growing your own food and drinking milk without pasteurizing it, it's some sort of act of defiance. And that's why you had those people commenting to Matt Walsh, who is a fascist, saying they're just going to reject anything the Rothschilds make them do. And I know to a lot of normal people, what I'm saying right now probably sounds crazy, and it's probably not the biggest issue in the world, but trust me, this is wrapped up in loads of fashy shit. And don't often believe a lot of these types when it seems like they're using anti-capitalist language, because they don't hate big pharma, big dairy, the agricultural monopolies. They don't hate it for the same reason a lot of us left-wing people do. Their brains have just been melted by TikTok and the belief in their own wellness bullshit. So that is it for the video. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments. And if you made it this far, thank you for watching.